Hello everybody and welcome to another video here at Playing Board Games, where I'm going to be checking out this Arkham article, a look at things to come, presenting the upcoming product lineup for Arkham Horror the card game. This is to give some further insight that they shared on a live stream last week on the FFG YouTube. And I will say, I haven't been on Reddit to read any opinions. I've kind of stopped going to the Arkham subreddit because it's kind of become a little bit of a pit. So I imagine overall the reaction to this news isn't good because people don't like change. But as always, I'm kind of just interested to see how things are going to go. I'm going to read through here. I am not looking to argue whether these changes are good or bad because we haven't seen how the changes were implemented. But in a few days on the channel, I'm going to have a list video, which are some hopes that I have for the new format. Because I'm not too bothered by the changes, I don't really actually care one way or the other. But if you don't know what the changes are, I'm going to get through them here and we're going to talk about them. I'm not looking to argue or prove your opinion right and or wrong. I'm just here reading the news in this video. We'll have a lot of videos in the future talking about these changes, especially once we actually get them on our table and put them into practice and see how they feel actually physically playing with them. So, Back in November, during our in-flight report at PAX Unplugged, we gave a brief glimpse of what the product roadmap will be for this game in 2026. In case you missed the presentation or need a refresher, you can see that roadmap right here. Spring, summer, fall. Today we'd like to provide a full breakdown of what type of different types of expansions for Arkham Horror the card game will look like in the future. By the end of this article, you should have a good grasp of what sort of things to expect going forward, and spoiler alert, there's quite a bit to be excited for. So if you don't know what the release is for 2026, we have the new core set, we have the 5 starter decks, we have the mini expansion Children of Blood, and we have the standalone scenario, which I believe is called Traces to Nowhere. So we have this new core, which is going to have the new encounter cards, new 3-scenario campaign. We have the Children of Blood, which is another 3-scenario campaign, and then we have Traces to Nowhere. So we're getting 7 scenarios in this new in the new calendar year for 2026. And it's we actually know when they're all coming. So assuming shipping lines stay the same, we know that there is stuff coming in Arkham 2026 as opposed to just kind of sitting in the darkness. So I think overall, no matter what, I want to say that I think this communication is it's appreciated, and I think it's a nice difference to what it was for the last few years when we in the Arkham community just got silence about what was coming out, and we just kind of were like, I think the player card and campaign expansion are coming out soon, but now we have what the products are and when we can expect them roughly, assuming shipping lines work okay. Before we dive into the full breakdown, let's establish some terminology. Going forward, there will be 2 main categories of products for the game: Evergreen products and rotating expansions. Evergreen products, as the term suggests, are products that will stick around for the foreseeable future. These form the core backbone of the game. They will remain in print and exist within the current environment. Rotating expansions, therefore, are everything else. Each rotating expansion will be printed enough times to support it as part of the current environment for roughly 2 years, after which it will be retired. At that point, it rotates out of the current environment and will only exist in the legacy environment. So if this is released in 2026, you can expect, following the words that we have here, Children of Blood, for example, to be in print until 2028 is going to probably be when its last printings are going to be. One thing to keep in mind, this is something that they talked about in the AMA that happened I covered on a previous video on the channel. Foreign distribution actually works a little bit differently, where FFG isn't really directly responsible for the amount of products that are printed in, for example, the German language, like in Spanish or French or that kind of thing. So that is something that you should talk to your own game stores to make sure that they know you want this product so you can get the pre-orders if you do want to keep up with them. As a reminder, you choose what products you want to use for your game. If you want to keep playing with your favorite expansion, even after it rotates out of the current environment, that's perfectly fine. After all, everything in the current environment is also in the legacy environment. Now that's out of the way, let's take a deeper dive of what's coming up for the game in the future. that seems pretty standard. Play with what you want. They also, in the stream, covered the idea that they are going forward with the product intention that the game is also now sort of becoming purchase what you want, where they are releasing products and not expecting everyone to buy everything. So it's something that you as a consumer can decide. If you look at, for example, a 3-scenario campaign and you say that's not enough scenarios for me, feel free to not buy it. If it's bought less, Fantasy Flight Games might say, hey, maybe we shouldn't do these 3-scenario campaign boxes. You as a consumer have the power to buy that. And to make those choices and weigh on the game in that way if you feel so inclined. And if you do like the 3-scenario campaigns and you want to pick it up, go for it. But that's something that they covered in the live stream, where it's like they are not expecting everyone to buy everything, but with 4 releases a year, they're hoping to hit all the corners of the Arkham community that they are able to within that time frame. All right, Evergreen products. Since Evergreen products form the core game, it's only natural that the most important of these products is the core set itself. We first revealed the new core set for the game's Chapter 2 era back in late October, and we're just a couple short months away from its release, which is currently, I believe, aiming for like March 20th, so 2 months from the time that I'm recording this video, so pretty hyped for that. This is the only product the game line that new players need to pick up if they want to play the game. Existing players will also need to grab one if they want to play through any campaigns that come after it, which is fine since the new core has a bunch of new stuff in it for veterans as well. New investigators, new player cards that we've been seeing spoiled over the last few months. The new Arkham Horror, the card game core set is slated to release this March. Following close behind the new core set is a batch of 5 Evergreen Investigator decks. Each of these decks provides one playable Investigator, a pre-built deck for that Investigator, and a bunch of player cards for that Investigator's class to expand deck building options. These decks feature Tommy Muldoon as a Guardian Investigator, Carolyn Fern as a Seeker, newcomer Andre Patel as a Rogue, Marie Lambeau as a Mystic, and newcomer Miguel de la Cruz as a Survivor. Between these 5 Investigators and the 5 in the new core, you'll have a 10 total that will remain within the current environment going forward. All 5 Evergreen Investigator decks were released at the same time this April. So, keep in mind that even though these are Evergreen, as they mention up here, they will, for the foreseeable future, these are planning to remain in print. At this point now, the living card game definition has changed. If you haven't realized that by now, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news for that sort of thing. But how this is working is that currently these are Evergreen, but who knows what the game state will be in 10 years. I would love it if I could keep playing new Arkham within 10 years, but if it might change before that, it might change after that. It's one of those things where this is no longer set in stone, but the Evergreen products is the current plan for the foreseeable future, which is going longer than 2 years. They can't give an exact date, but this is just something to be aware of, that things might change again, but right now, for the foreseeable future, for the area that they are currently designing the game for, these are suggested to be the things that are going to be staying in print. So while you don't need to rush to get the Investigator starter decks, they are going to be available for in core and Evergreen for the foreseeable future. Rotating expansions. Now that we've covered the Evergreen content for the game, let's take a look at the 5 types of rotating expansions you can look forward to. So 5 different types of rotating expansions. We got Children of Blood. First up, we have a new product type, the small campaign expansions. These are just what they sound like, short, typically 3-scenario campaigns that provide a self-contained Arkham Horror experience similar to the core set itself. These will alternate with full-scale campaign expansions, more on those in a moment, in the expansion release cadence, ensuring that you will always have something new to look forward to. The first small campaign expansion for the game is Children of Blood, slated to release late this summer. As I stated, I'm not here to get too into the weeds in regarding my thoughts and opinion on this. I'm focusing this video primarily as like covering news video, which I do on the channel now and again. I'll be talking about my thoughts. I'm going to get Eric. I'm sure I'll be talking with Daniel, Travis, Bryn. Right, we'll be talking about all this kind of stuff because I think this is a very sticky point for a lot of the Arkham community. My advice with most things in life is don't fret about it until you see it in action. And then decide then whether it comes to price, gameplay, if there's enough meat on the bones for that kind of thing for you as a player. These are all things that you consider in the future, but don't worry about it right now, because that, in my opinion, is just anxiety. But yeah, I'm very curious about these 3 short scenario campaigns, mostly because we haven't seen something like this. However, this is something that I, as a player, have requested in the past, so I'm very curious to see how the design team explores it. On the topic of a self-contained experience, the much-loved scenario packs have always been a staple during Arkham's first chapter, and that's not changing anytime soon. These packs continue to provide thrilling standalone scenarios that you can slot into a larger campaign, or just play on their own. Just like with Chapter 1, you can look forward to getting a new scenario pack around once a year. This year's scenario pack is Traces to Nowhere, and it'll hit the store shelves this fall. So Traces to Nowhere this is not really new. All the way back from Curse of the Rougarou, we had these standalone scenarios. We actually recently on the channel started to include some in a Path to Carcosa campaign, and I feel like the intention is that these are going to be, by design, suggested more so to add to campaigns. I feel like it's kind of like a full, like especially with like the 3 and then the shorter full-length campaign that we're going to be seeing coming up right away. I think it's kind of they're pushing towards that. That's at least what they said in the live stream. While I was never a big fan of that, I actually had a lot of fun doing that most recently in a run that Travis, Brennan, and I are doing through Path to Carcosa. So just some things that I think is interesting, and if you are a big fan of scenarios packs, it's nice to see they're not going anywhere. There's some really good ones, like Blob That Ate Everything, the War of the Outer Gods, I'm a big fan. I think Midwinter Gala is a really enjoyable one. Film Fatale, actually also the most recent one, proved to be pretty good, so I'm very excited to see what Traces to Nowhere does when it comes out in the fall. All right, as we hinted in the small campaign expansion section above, there will also be larger campaign expansions in Chapter 2. These campaigns feature 5 scenarios with deeper narratives and impactful experiences that emphasize maximum replayability. While this product type shares its name with campaign expansions from Chapter 1, it is important to note that these campaigns will no longer be thematically tied to Investigator expansions going forward. So, some big news here is that the size of the campaigns are getting shorter. They cited the main reason that they cited for this within the live stream was the fact that they found that it was harder for players, especially as players, as life gets more involved. 8 campaigns was a little bit harder for players to get to the table. I don't know whether if this is from surveys or any sort of like talking with their playtesters or even like people they know or players them as designers themselves. I'm not too sure what the source for that's like the cited source for that was, but it is a big change from going from 8 to 5. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that that isn't a big change. I think that, funnily enough, though, we've actually kind of been there for a little bit, where like Scarlet Keys can be like a really short campaign. It can be a bit longer. There are more than 5 scenarios in the box, same like with Hemlock Vale. So I'm curious to see how much exploration happens in here. I'm also curious to see of how much comes around it, right? Like if there's more time reading, finding the balance between them. What's the gameplay like in the scenarios? Are the scenarios generally longer to make up for it? Like, are the gameplay sessions longer? Because that has some pros and some cons. I think overall, it's not going to change too much with how scenarios are played or like the structure of scenarios. But rather, I think that the campaign format is going to feel slightly differently. They said in the live stream as well that XP will be balanced accordingly for this, so players are able to explore their decks fully to be able to have more cards. As I mentioned with the standalone scenarios, they also highly suggested if you wanted a longer campaign for more time to play with your deck, consider adding those standalone scenarios in. While I don't understand that people might have some thematic dissonance about including those things, at a certain point, you are the arbiter of your own game. You can kind of decide how things are. So it's one of those things where you can kind of make that come together. And additionally as well, they also said that they were aware of the idea of linking a short and a standard campaign together, which I think could also be a really neat solution to try to come with things. So this is why I'm saying, I'm personally, myself, if I got into my opinion, I'm not too bothered about the idea of a 5-scenario campaign. I'm honestly actually kind of bored of my deck around scenario 5, so that works fine for me. It's like, ooh, this is like a little gift. But I think that overall, I'm not thinking too much about this until I actually see it in action and see if they use the smaller scale campaign to explore designs and potentially come up with new things. And I find it interesting, I don't know if this is me reading into it, but this says features 5 scenarios, and this one says typically 3 scenarios. I wonder if these are both typically this number, and there's like, maybe one of them is going to be 6, maybe the other one's 5, maybe there's 7 in one, right? Like if like they're letting, instead of having a rigid structure that they have to follow because they've always followed it, I'm very curious if this is instead being like, we're going to let the product itself kind of push how things are going to go. I'm also very curious about card counts in these and prices, but we'll worry about that once we get closer to actually seeing the release of these products and, you know, going through that. These are all things that big wait and see, but I understand that you as a viewer are probably very curious and perhaps even a little bit inflamed. So I'm just saying, hey, patience, we'll figure this all out, and there's no sense in worrying about it right now. All right. Speaking of Investigator expansions, the Investigator expansions also return in Chapter 2. Yay! Yay! Just like before, these expansions provide a suite of new Investigators alongside a trove of new player cards to expand deck building options. As we touched on above, these expansions will no longer be thematically tied to any campaign expansions going forward, which means you can get a campaign covering one piece of the Arkham Horror story or setting, and then later get an Investigator expansion that covers something completely different. While I will admit I was a fan of the linking of the campaigns thematically, I also am totally open for them being different because it allows for more exploration of the mythos, which I think is really cool. This isn't too much of a big change. This is kind of just, they're going to be very similar for the Investigator expansions. I think what's most interesting is they said we're not necessarily going to get an Investigator expansion every year. Because the 4 products a year, I think, again, it goes to that point I just said. It really feels like they're trying to let the ideas and the products define the release as opposed to sticking to a rigid structure that they've stuck to for the last, like, 10 years, right? And I think, at least to me as a player, and also as someone who plays this game a lot, so I guess you can call me like an obsessed player, a very enfranchised player. That's very intriguing to me, so I'm curious to see. But the Investigator expansions are not the final product, but there also are deck building expansions. Finally, if the Investigator expansions aren't enough player content for you, then look no further than the deck building expansions. This new expansion type can be thought of as a player card counterpart of the small campaign expansions for scenario content. Deck building expansions will not contain any new Investigators, usually. Instead, they are packed full of new player cards across all 5 classes with the sole purpose of expanding deck building options. Just like the small campaigns expansions alternate with the larger ones, deck building expansions will alternate with Investigator expansions in the release cadence, giving you a steady stream of new customization options to look forward to. So I actually think that this is something that is super exciting. This is something that we've asked for a lot. I'm curious to see the format for these as they get released, but there's not too many details to talk about here, but just know that there are... So essentially how it is there's the Evergreen stuff, which is always in print. There is 3 gameplay expansions, either like scenarios. So that's the large, small, and then standalone. And then there are the 2 deck building, Investigator, and deck building. So like there's like the 60% of the releases going forward are going to be the PvE content, and then the other stuff is going to be the deck building and customization content. So we can look forward to that coming up in the future for Arkham Horror. With new Evergreen products hitting stores soon and a plethora of rotating expansions on the horizon, it's clear that Arkham Horror, the card game, is here to stay. The game has a long and exciting future ahead of it, and we can't wait to share it with all of you soon. With all of you. See you soon from Fantasy Flight Games. So, as I said, I'm not going to delve too much into my own deep opinions and thoughts on this. I have a video coming out in a few days, which are my hopes for the new campaign format and the exploration of large and small. So you can look forward to that on the channel. In the meantime, I hope this was helpful news to you. I covered as much as I could, also that I remembered from the live stream where they delved into it a little bit deeper. So yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you're having a great time playing Arkham. I'll see you all for another one very soon. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. And as always, a GG's.